That's about news, finance, and everything in between, guys. And in today's video, we're going to talk about a topic that not a lot of people actually know what it is, and it's called globalization. And so we got to define globalization to discuss it. So if you're new to the channel, though, go and subscribe and check out my Patreon. Subscribe to that too if you can. Support my channel. Helps me grow and helps me provide videos to you guys each and every day. All right, let's get into it. So what is globalization? Okay. Well, globalization describes the growing interdependence of the world's economies, cultures, and populations brought about by cross-border trade in goods and services, technology, and flows of investment, people, and information. Countries have built economic partnerships to facilitate these movements over many centuries. The term gained popularity after the Cold War in the 1990s as these cooperative arrangements shape modern everyday life. So, guys, look, essentially, you've got the economies all interdependent, really, at the end of the day. And it goes on to say, look, the wide-ranging effects of globalization are complex and controversial. As the major technological advances, globalization has delivered benefits to the world's societies, but has been a target of criticism for allegedly harming certain groups and aggravating inflation, supply chain disruptions, trade disputes, and national security concerns. Understanding the relative cost and benefits can pave the way for alleviating problems while sustaining the wider payoffs. Obviously, every pro has a con in this. Globalization pretty much has made everything cheaper for everybody, right? So let's get into this video right here. This is, explaining globalization, uneven impact, who truly benefits. Let's watch.
This is not only America, it's countries all over the world, all over Europe. Globalization, the benefits of it have been unevenly distributed, to say the least. You have a class of people that are, many of them own assets, and they've seen the value of those assets increase. Many of them are invested in the market, and they're incredibly happy with the freedom to move capital around the world and make lots and lots of money. But the citizens of the countries that they live, their standards of living have been lowered and lowered and lowered. And this is not, it's not only America, it's this financial architecture that seems to be replacing people's cultures, histories, and idea of what a nation is.
Yeah, because what's happening is that these companies, these corporations will move into a poor region or poor country, and they'll just pretty much build their infrastructure and just take over the region, and then the local population will become pretty much subservient. They'll benefit because people get jobs and stuff like that, but they pretty much just like take the resources. That's why you start seeing all these child camps and stuff like that in these regions, and these labor force camps, because and they've got kids in these things, and obviously that's not good. So, look, it on the surface, globalization sounds good, and we've benefited from globalization because of everything's been cheaper. But really, at the end of the day, like, you have to consider too is that all this manufacturing that we're pretty much exporting to other countries, we can do all the manufacturing here in the United States. I don't know why we haven't done that. I guess because of inflation, and the companies were trying to get cheap labor. But look, the cookie's crumbling, guys. The cookie's crumbling, and we've got to bring manufacturing back to the United States. And you're going to start seeing more inflation. I think they're going to, that's the whole thing. We're going to see more inflation here. So let's get in this next video, guys. This is by Jordan Peterson. He's just talking, but the ugly truth of globalization. Let's watch.
I've been trying to understand the driving ideas underneath this globalist utopian tyranny that seems to be developing from the top down. And I think it's driven at least in part by this religious vision that I already described. You know, that you have to construe culture itself, especially industrial culture, as the tyrannical father raping and pillaging everything in its way, which is unbelievably dangerous way to think, too one-sided. And the idea that you have to impose limits to growth on people in order to have a sustainable planet. And that's allied with a view that probably stems all the way back to people like Paul Ehrlich in the 1960s, who really believed that maybe the planet should only have 500 million people on it, or a billion, you know, in relative poverty, or 2 billion barely scraping by, because otherwise they're going to be wrecking everything, and, you know, controlled by some top-down authority that makes bloody well sure that no one's consuming too much. And so when I look at ideas like
That's crazy, right? I know that there was like um guidestones in Georgia, the Georgia Guidestones, and they were talking about that too, how like there was a global agenda to get the population way down. And tying that into globalization, maybe that was globalization's, agenda was to just control everything and everybody. So then essentially they would be able to depopulate the planet. Who knows? I know it's a crazy conspiracy theory, but anything's true. Anything can be true in today's age. So I don't know how the heck they would even get the population down. To be honest with you, maybe through a major war or another event. Who knows? Let's keep watching.
you know, the planet has too many people on it. It's like, I don't like to hear people say that, because when I hear that, I think, okay, buddy, who exactly are you thinking about getting rid of? Oh, well, it's not like that. It's like, yeah, it's like that. It's absolutely like that. And so, you know, it's easy to get all paranoid conspiracy theorist about the WEF, say, and maybe there's some utility in that. But, you know, I don't think anybody's sitting at Davos going, well, we got to scrap 7 billion people. But if the underlying narrative is the one I just described, you know, virginal planet, tyrannical patriarchy, and rapacious individual, and you believe, well, we're overpopulated, like Paul Ehrlich has believed since really literally the mid 1960s, then how is it not going to be that the policies that you craft stemming from that narrative are colored by the belief that there's far too many people? I really felt that I'd be at war for them.
Guys, I just don't see how there's too many people. I really don't see that. Like, I do not understand this concept that the world is overpopulated. Like, get into an airplane or get in your car and drive 3 hours away from your city. Like, there's nobody. There's not that many people. Like, I don't understand how there is this grand conspiracy to think that the world is overpopulated. It's it's a fallacy. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, they're just trying to control people. At the end of the day, it goes back to control and manipulation of entire civilization. These people control, you know, the planet for generations, and they're slowly, like in college, they're indoctrinating people to think that the world's overpopulated, and they're trying to manipulate everything, and with globalization, they're trying to. The globalization, in my opinion, is essentially like the arm of the shadow government, right? And they just use globalization to just invade your country with corporations and just rob it of all of its resources, and then extract those resources and then move on. That's all it is, really. It's like a global empire, a global shadow empire.
6 months. And I would say it's war, because what I observed happening in Europe when I was there last was that it's pretty damn clear that the globalist utopians are willing to sacrifice the poor for the sake of the planet, and they're doing that by cranking energy prices up through the roof, and that means that people die. Lomberg has estimated that maybe you have to turn your thermostat down by 3 degrees, right? Save the planet. We don't have enough energy. We'll pay you not to use your electricity between 5 and 6, which is what they're doing in the UK. You turn your damn thermostat down 3 degrees, that sounds like nothing. But if you're old, that radically increases the probability that you'll get a respiratory disease and die. And if the Europeans would have had a cold winter, and that could still happen, Lomberg estimated wipe out 135,000 people. It's like, well, we're just making energy more expensive. It's like, what do you mean you're just doing that? So imagine the economic system pyramid. There's bunch of people at the top. They have almost all the money. That's par for the course for any productive system. Any system that's productive ends up with a distribution like that. It's like a law of nature. And then you move farther down the pyramid till you get down to the bottom where most of the people are, and they're barely clinging on to the edge of reality, right? It doesn't take much of a crisis to tip them into, death. And then you crank up energy prices. Well, what happens is you just take a bunch of those people at the bottom of the distribution, the poor that the left is so, hypothetically concerned with, and they're just done. They go from barely hanging on to not hanging on. And their kids go from having some ghost of a chance of opportunity to having none. And I could see this coming. You really saw it happening in Germany and the UK, where we have this absolute rat's nest of way more expensive energy. And this is where it gets extremely perverse. You might say, okay, look, we have to save the future poor. And so now some of the present poor are going to have to suffer. Well, that's convenient for you if you happen not to be one of those poor people. But let's give the devil his due and say, okay. It's like, that'd be fine with me. Not really. That'd be fine with me if the consequence of your actions, raising energy prices, for example, actually produced an improvement in those things you wanted to improve. So, for example, energy is more expensive, but now the air is cleaner. But that isn't what's happened in Germany. What's happened in Germany is energy is like 5 times as expensive, and the coal plants are back on. So it's like, even by your own criteria for success, you failed, and you did it at the expense of the poor.
Yeah, people are pretty much people are getting poor under the stance of globalization, and these people, these elites, the people that are really running stuff, with globalization, like they're dictating every aspect of our life. They're telling people they can't, control their own temperature in their house. That's insane. But it goes back to like the control. They can control you. If they can't directly tell you, force you to do something, they'll control you with money. So they'll control you by keeping you poor, right? Extracting the dollars out of your wallet and out of your purse. That's how they'll control you. So they'll control you by charging you more money for things, taxing you more, right? That's how they keep people in a state of constant desperation, and they can't really think and escape the system. That's what this whole globalization idea was. I think was the real reason for globalization. That and just to invade countries and extract resources, but. I digress. Let's watch this last video right here, guys. It's a clip.
The U.S. tries to build its own semiconductor manufacturing capacity as China loses key trade partners, as all of these markets stop trading with each other and start to build redundancy. There is a massive, longer-range economic effect of de-globalization. Globalization enables efficient pricing. It enables labor and energy and everything to be done, to go to the cheapest source. That's the way globalization has benefited us. We've been able to get cheap energy and cheap labor in overseas markets to do work for us. And as a result, we've gotten access to cheap products. So when you de-globalize, you end up having to pay more for labor, more for energy. You have to build infrastructure, and the price for everything goes up. The U.S.
Just like this guy said. When you deglobalize, you cause inflation. When you deglobalize, you are making everything across the board more expensive because now you have to build the infrastructure back home. Like, for example, U.S. has to now build the infrastructure back home just to be able to build to build the infrastructure to be able to build the products that we need here in the United States. So essentially, there is gonna be another wave of inflation coming. I guarantee you guys that, and it's gonna be because of all the manufacturing coming back to the United States through the deglobalization. So when the companies start moving back, now they have to charge even more money because now they have to build the infrastructure to produce the goods and services that we need here in the United States. On top of now they're hiring Americans. So now their labor costs are going to go up as well. So we think we're out of this inflationary storm. Oh, no. It's just beginning, guys. It's just beginning. So anyways, guys, look, like, subscribe if you haven't already, guys. Check out my Patreon. Subscribe to my Patreon, guys. It really helps my channel out grow, please. And on that note, guys, like I said, like, follow, share, subscribe. Hit up the Patreon guys for support, and I will talk to you guys on the next one, okay? Peace out.